I feel like every time that we see this character and me on ZA in the hotel, it means we're having a conversation today. And we are! Today is going to be kind of a shorter video, but I wanted to hop on here and clarify some things. Number one, let's talk about Generation 7. So, last video, I talked about Gen 7, and I kind of jumbled around a little bit. I made my complaint clear that I think the story stinks. That the story stinks and that the games itself in that generation are bad as compared to the rest of the modern generations. I kind of want to not backpedal on those points, but I kind of want to reinforce those points with the factoid of the Generation 7 games, at least to me, have the biggest problems. Because they introduced mechanics like the Z-Ring that are ultimately just not fun. The Z-Ring and it being like a one-hit kill move 99% of the time is just not fun. The story is here and there. And I understand some people say that, like, oh, but the story is super cool. It can be at times. I think the Aether Paradise section of Sun and Moon is probably the strongest bit that it has. But otherwise, the rest of the story is just not as strong as what people think it is. I don't look very fondly at Gen 7. Because I don't really miss it. Some of the Pokemon that they made and introduced during that time, like Lycanroc, Wishiwashi, some of those guys are perfect. They're great Pokemon. It's just the Generation 7 ick that it has, that it drives me nuts with. Heck, even Hoopa here is a Gen 6 Pokemon, but really didn't get featured until like Generation 7. Which is crazy. Because Gen 7 really focused more on bringing the mythicals to the games. But that's without the point. That's besides the point. Gen 7, I wanted to make sure that I touch on this because I want to make sure that my point is fully discussed and fully clear. I'm not saying they are the worst video games. I just don't think they're the best Pokemon games. I think they are beyond one of the weakest ones. I think they are a very weak mainline Pokemon game. As far as mainline goes, they're very weak to me. And that's all I'm going to say about it. I know I went a little hard and aggressive on it last video, but I wanted to make sure that I am calmer now and kind of more focused. To the point where I want to make sure that everybody knows that it's not because the games are like horrible. It's because I don't really think the story's all there and that the mechanics of the Z-Ring are great. I think those three things are why those games suffer to me. Anyway, moving onward. My stuff about Generation 8 and Generation 9. Gen 8 is a tough generation to judge because it's been super recent, right? But I think if you're looking at it respectively, right? Sword and Shield are very flawed games in the story department. Visually, they're rough. Not because of, like, anything they did, but because some of them have Ocarina of Time trees. If you know, you know. But Generation's a weird generation to judge. Not just because it's recent, but because of the whole, like, the story's not great in Sword and Shield. The DLCs didn't really add too much, and it was the first Pokemon game to have DLCs for their stories, and the DLC stories are better. Like, it's a stronger makes the strong story in Sword and Shield stronger. And then you have the Legends Arceus games and Shining Pearl BDSP. Shining Pearl and BDSP are probably among the worst remakes in the series, because they do nothing to enhance the games, but add a couple of cool things to them, and they're just not what I would say are great games. And then you have Legends Arceus, which is by far one of the best games they've made, because they highlighted lore, they made lore possible, they made characters that connect to other characters as ancestry, and they're just great. They're fantastic characters that make a ton of sense. And are awesome. So those are those three things all in one. Because Arceus is great. Legends Arceus is a great game, man. And it's serious. It's a serious toned game. I want to talk about that too. In my rant, I said, oh, it can't have death in it. That's wrong. I was just caught up in the moment. It can definitely have death in it. By the way, like, death is a natural part of things. I just don't think having super mature topics, like abusing your kids, which is a thing in Gen 7, I do not think that's a good idea. Just saying. But how else are you going to talk about those things and make sure that kids know that it's not okay, other than having a game be lighthearted and toned different about it? So it's a hard, slippery slope. Just know that when I say it shouldn't be in there, I mean it as don't ham-fist it, like what Gen 7 did with Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, in the Sun and Moon games. I don't think it was necessary for it to be in there in the story. I really don't. But anyway, that's what I want to make sure about that. Because I said that, which is not exactly what I mean. Generation 8 definitely is flawed. I think Sword and Shield is among the top of the worst games. I would not call them worse than Gen 7. I just won't. Because I think they at least did some things right. And again, the mechanic of Dynamax and Gigantamax is fine, I guess. Like, it's not the biggest of deals. Then, in Generation 9, let's talk about Gen 9. I think everything but the performance graphically is the best thing about Generation 9. Because you have you have Scarlet and Violet and their DLCs, which the DLCs aren't great for Scarlet and Violet, but at least they're passable enough that you'd enjoy them. Then there's that, and then Legends EA. Legends EA is a great game because it answers questions about the Kalos region and makes the Gen 6 games better. It answers those questions and makes those questions easier to answer. Now, there are decisions in both games that I think really hamper those experiences. First off, Generation 9 has two problems, really. And it's the performance at launch, and still to this day, performance, that hampers it, because it's not a great game, performance-wise. And then with Generation 9 comes the weird decision to try and it's the same thing as performance reasons, but trying to do too much. The Pokemon Scarlet and Violet games are performance heightened games, meaning they are trying to be the best games ever performance-wise for Pokemon. And performance-wise, I mean graphically. And they tried to up the visuals and all of this, but they really made a broken product when they tried to do that. And then you look over at ZA, and it's a very pretty game. It's beautiful. I love the designs and everything. But why is there painted on balcony textures? Excuse me. Why is there balcony textures? Why is there painted on balcony textures in a game that's $70? And that's where the point is like, the last several mainline games just feel rushed in several ways, and that the mechanics aren't fully realized. That's it. Heck, even Mega Evolution in ZA, depending on the Mega that you use in the ranked mode on here and in Champions, you're gonna win. Speaking of Champions, we will get back to that game eventually. I'm not sure when, because really, I played a couple more matches off screen and I didn't have too much fun with them. We'll touch and go with it. Maybe we'll do like one video a week or something, or a video every other week with it. You might see one this week. Who knows? But I think that's about it for me. I wanted to make sure that I talk about all of that fun stuff and make sure I hyper focus on it. Okay? We are going to end the video off here. If you agree with my sentiments about the last 3 modern generations, let me know in the comments below. I will say, I'm very much looking forward for Generation 10. Also, I forgot to introduce myself. I am your host, King of Fluff, and I am also going to sign off right here. See y'all later. Bye-bye.